Golden Globe nominations are just days away. I'm Zach Laws of Gold Derby, and joining me now to discuss are Riley Chow, Tony Ruiz, and Luca Giliberti. We're going to do the best we can to help you out with your Golden Globe predictions. I should say that, we are all over the place on ours. Let's just kind of do lightning round category by category, starting off with the supporting actor race, which is a really tough one. I just want to go to each of you and ask what you're predicting, and then we can dish it out bit by bit. Let me start with you, Riley. Let us know who your five are and why we should be predicting them.
All right, so I've got Brad Pitt, obviously. In second place, I actually have Timothée Chalamet, because I feel like Little Women is a late release that the Globes will want to be the first to, highlight. And he's a young rising star. They've nominated a couple times in recent years. Then I've got Anthony Hopkins, Tom Hanks, and Shia LaBeouf.
All right, Tony, what do you think?
I've got some of those same ones. I've got Tom Hanks, Brad Pitt. I've got Anthony Hopkins. I also have Pacino because I'm not crazy, and the one that I'm struggling with is that fifth slot. Right now, I have Willem Dafoe, but I will entertain alternative options.
Luca's dropped out for a second. I will give you my predictions real quick while we wait for Luca to return. I am going with two people from The Irishman, Al Pacino and Joe Pesci. I've got Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Then I have Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit and Shia LaBeouf for Honey Boy. Luca, are you there now?
Yes, I am. So sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Now, give us your five, please.
I have Brad Pitt 2, Tom Hanks in number 3, Willem Dafoe in 4th position, and then I do have Joe Pesci in 5th. I do feel like this will be a place where Willem Dafoe does show up for The Lighthouse, because last year for At Eternity's Gate, he was able to show up here and then was able to get that Oscar nomination. And the voting committee for the Globes, obviously, is only around 90-something people, and I think he can get enough votes to sneak into this category. So I pretty much agree with everyone else. It's an incredibly stacked race. Anything can happen. The only one I really feel confident about is Brad Pitt and probably the two Irishman men. And everything after that is just a mystery. But I think Tom Hanks, despite his many Oscar snubs, will be able to show up here because HFPA does really like him. And then I already mentioned the reasons for Dafoe.
So it looks like we're all over the place. You couldn't get more varied in our predictions. I can count very little consistency aside from Brad Pitt, it seems. We didn't even mention several other contenders, people like Alan Alda in Marriage Story, or Sterling K. Brown for Waves, Jamie Foxx for Just Mercy. Is there any chance that we could see somebody who we're not really talking about? Does anybody have an idea of who that could be?
Yeah, I've actually got Song Kang-ho winning the Oscar, but I don't have him in my SAG predictions, and I don't have him in my Globe predictions. And normally you want to make your Oscar predictions and kind of work backwards. But yeah, did the Globes nominate a lot of foreign language performances?
Not really.
I'm just thinking of how last year they loved Roma so much, yet they didn't nominate any of the performances, and it got 2 acting nominations at the Oscars. But maybe if I figure that he's strong enough to win the Oscar, I should at least have him for a nomination here.
Right.
Well, I think it depends on, and you guys can jump in on this too, it depends on how strong Parasite does overall, because as we know, even though this is the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, they don't nominate foreign language films in Best Picture. So Bong Joon-ho could be in director and screenplay and foreign film. But if someone like a Song Kang-ho or another actor from the film were to show up, I think that would be some kind of indication that maybe this is their favorite film, even though they can't nominate it because of some crazy rule. What do you guys think?
Well, that would make me like ridiculously happy. Parasite is my number one film of the year, and Song Kang-ho certainly deserves it. If he gets in, if he were to get in here, which I don't think he will, but that would signal that would be a huge boost to that performance. I just don't know that the HFPA, Riley's right. I can't think off the top of my head the last time they nominated a foreign language performance. Isabelle Huppert won for Elle.
Yeah.
So it's possible, I guess.
I guess it's more like it might be easier in the lead categories, as we'll talk about a little bit later, for a foreign language performer to get nominated, since they have like 10 slots they can fill as opposed to just these 5. Which might be, I might be going out on a bit of a limb predicting 2 people from the same movie to get nominated here, since they might want to spread the wealth a little bit. But I'm just assuming that Pesci and Pacino are going to get nominated everywhere throughout the season. And, this is going to be like the first place that starts. I should say, before
we'll see that, Zach.
Yes, we will see about that, Riley. We'll see about that. I guess before we move on for this category, I'll say that I'm predicting Shia LaBeouf because I think that his comeback narrative is too great to ignore, and the Globes really do love that kind of thing. I mean, you look at, for instance, like a Michael Douglas getting nominated for Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, right after his bout with cancer. They kind of love that, those Hollywood stars coming back to work after some kind of adversity. And I'm putting Taika Waititi in just because my instincts tells me that the Hollywood Foreign Press is going to go for Jojo Rabbit in a big way, even though I'm not certain about his Oscar chances in this category. Luca, do you have any, or Tony or Riley, do you guys have any final thoughts on this category before we move on?
Well, I guess like at the SAG Awards, if Bombshell has a good morning, I think John Lithgow could easily get in for playing Roger Ailes. He did not win for The Crown when everyone thought he was going to win. What gives me pause is that we have 2 Roger Ailes eligible here. We have Russell Crowe for the Showtime series, and then we obviously have John Lithgow. So I'm wondering if they'll go for both of them or if they'll only go for one of them. But I think Bombshell would have to perform pretty well overall, and I feel more confident in, actress and supporting actress, and maybe best drama for the movie to get in. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him show up here at all. And I agree with Taika Waititi because I don't have him in yet, but I'm very tempted to put him in because I've heard that the HFPA loves Jojo Rabbit, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it show up in more categories than we're probably predicting at the moment.
Well, with that, why don't we move on to supporting actress? Riley, give us your thoughts.
Okay, well, along those lines about Jojo Rabbit, I do have Scarlett Johansson, and I've got Zhao Zhuzhen and Margot Robbie for Bombshell, Jennifer Lopez for Hustlers, and Laura Dern for Marriage Story winning. Now, I could see Margot Robbie get 2 nominations, but I also feel like her performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might be too slight, and it's possible that she actually gets no nominations for that performance this whole season. So we'll see.
Tony, what are you thinking?
I have the exact same 5 that Riley has.
Well then, Luca, how about you?
Well, I almost have the exact same 5. I have, obviously, Laura Dern. I have Jennifer Lopez, Margot Robbie for Bombshell. I have Florence Pugh for Little Women because she's been cited as one of the standouts of the movie. And then I also have Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit, again, because I think the movie will be embraced a lot by the HFPA. Of course, I think probably Florence Pugh is the most vulnerable, but she's had a really good year between Little Women and Midsommar. And I think they'll want to give her a nomination. She's the typical ingenue breakthrough performer who's often nominated at the Globes. Even if she, had a breakthrough performance with Macbeth a few years ago, I think this is her year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see her get in.
Okay, with that, I'll tell you my five. I have Scarlett Johansson in Jojo Rabbit. I have Laura Dern for Marriage Story. I have Annette Bening for The Report, even though I think her Oscar chances are a little shakier. They do like, the HFPA does like her a lot better than the Academy. I mean, they have given her a couple of wins. They've nominated her for things like 20th Century Women and Bugsy, which didn't translate into Oscar nominations. So I could see her showing up here, if not at the Oscars. I have Margot Robbie for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because I wonder if Bombshell is going to resonate with the HFPA, if maybe it's coming out too late, and maybe they're just going to nominate her for this instead. And in my number one spot, I have Jennifer Lopez for Hustlers, because I think that her winning for this movie is just too good for them to pass up. Guys, is there anyone we're not talking about? I mean, I don't have Zhao Zhu Zhen in there just because I think that's more of a thing that would happen at the Oscars and the Critics' Choice as opposed to the Globes. I mean, like we talked about with Roma before, they didn't nominate Yalitza Aparicio or Marina de Tavera. They kind of go for more of the established stars than the newcomers. I don't have Florence Pugh in there. I don't have Maggie Smith, although I could see that happening for Downton Abbey. And I'll tell you, I mean, if there's one movie I've heard that the HFPA does love a lot more than we think they do, and that is The Laundromat. So I would look out for Meryl Streep to show up in here. What do you guys, I mean, we seem to be more consistent on this category. Any final thoughts before we move on?
I think, I haven't seen the movie, obviously, but I think Nicole Kidman could be nominated for Bombshell. She really hasn't been talked about as much as Charlize Theron and Margot Robbie have been, but the HFPA loves Nicole Kidman. They even gave her a nomination last year for Destroyer in the lead category, drama lead category. And maybe it's just the trio that gets nominated everywhere. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her get in, though I've heard that she doesn't really have, there's not much of an impact as, from Margot Robbie and Charlize Theron, which is what worries me in the end.
Well, not for nothing. Also, they have an opportunity to bring her to their ceremony anyway, because she'll probably be nominated on the TV side for Big Little Lies. So they might be able to take care of some other people here. Tony, Riley, any final thoughts?
Yeah, see, I actually feel the opposite about Zhao Zhen. I feel like she's more likely to get in at the Globes and at SAG, because at the Oscars, we sometimes see them just kind of double up on films that are higher priorities in terms of viewing. And I don't think The Farewell is necessarily going to be seen by as many Oscar voters as some of these bigger contenders. So I think she'll be one of those passion picks that gets pushed out at the end for somebody in Best Picture nominee.
Tony, anything to say about that? I know you've got her in your predictions too.
No, and I think Riley's exactly right. With as much smaller voting body that the HFPA has, there's more room for those passion picks. It's much easier to get a consensus around a passion pick when you have a much smaller voting body. So that's why I have her in.
Well, we'll certainly see. I mean, I don't think it's a bad prediction to have, but I think that, the Globe voters can be kind of funny that way. You know what I mean? For every kind of smaller passion pick, there's, just kind of nominating big stars. So we'll certainly see. With that, why don't we move over to the film, comedy, musical, actor category. Riley Chow, what have you got?
All right, so I've got Leonardo DiCaprio winning, then I have Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, Taron Egerton, and Daniel Craig for Knives Out. I'm not sure there's too much to say about that. I previously had Shia LaBeouf in for The Peanut Butter Falcon. But yeah, I'm not really considering a ton of other people for these nominations.
Tony Ruiz.
Yeah, I have the exact same five. In a slightly different order. I have Eddie Murphy winning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Luca, what have you got?
Yeah, sorry to be boring, but I also have the same five. And I agree with Tony. I have Eddie Murphy winning at the moment. I could see Taron Egerton winning, though, as well. He would be a typical Globe winner. They love their, young British actors. I think he could, and he gives a great performance in Rocket Man. But I do think Eddie Murphy has this in the bag at the moment. I do not think Leonardo DiCaprio can win this. It would make a lot of sense if he did because of how big a player Once Upon a Time in Hollywood will probably be. But I feel like there are other performances in this category that have much more passion. And I have to say, I really like this category because it gives, Adam Sandler the opportunity to sneak in and Daniel Craig, for some spotlight for Knives Out. So I think that's really great.
Well, I have the exact same five as well. I have Eddie Murphy winning. I do think Leonardo DiCaprio could win, just because I think that they will give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood something, and I don't know what that will be. It could just be Brad Pitt, but if Brad Pitt doesn't win, then I think that maybe DiCaprio would. Taron Egerton is also a possibility, and I think Adam Sandler is a possibility for winning as well. I think the reason why we have the exact same five is that this is kind of a light category this year. I mean, I'm looking at our ranking and the odds right now. You've got Roman Griffin Davis for Jojo Rabbit. Mm-hmm. You've got Himesh Patel for Yesterday. Riley, you mentioned Shia LaBeouf and the Peanut Butter Falcon. I mean, it's like, I guess I could nominate Will Smith and Aladdin, but hey, stranger things can happen. But I think we can move on from this category.
Yeah.
Let's talk about best. Let's do the actress side on comedy musical. Riley, what have you got?
Okay, so I've got Awkwafina winning. I've got Constance Wu in there. I've got Beanie Feldstein. And then I don't have Emma Thompson because I think Late Night is kind of too light a contender. It's too much of a comedy for the comedy categories of the Globes. And I don't have Caitlin Dever because Booksmart, I feel like, is a bit of a flop, and they don't really like to nominate younger performances, like how we are not predicting the Jojo Rabbit star, even though we're kind of high on Jojo Rabbit's chances overall. So instead, I've got Cate Blanchett because she's a big name, and sometimes that's all it takes to fill one of these comedy categories. And then I've got Ana de Armas from Knives Out because she has quite a sizable role in the movie, much larger than a bunch of the more famous casts. So I could see this being a bit of a breakthrough nomination, like there was a few years ago for Rules Don't Apply.
Right. Tony, what do you think? Will the rules apply this way?
You were waiting to get that in there. I also have Awkwafina winning. I've got Constance Wu. I've got both Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein from Booksmart, and I've got Cate Blanchett. But I'm not confident on both Booksmart actresses getting in. But I could totally see Ana de Armas getting in there. But I think she's the only plausible alternative because I can't figure out who else would move in there.
Luca, what do you think?
Yeah, I also have Awkwafina winning. Then I have Constance Wu. I have both Booksmart actresses, even though I'm not sure about Caitlin Dever because she is eligible for Unbelievable on the TV side. So they could just give her that nomination, especially as she's in the lead category for that show now. And then I do still have Emma Thompson. I don't feel confident about it at all. Honestly, she's just a spot filler at the moment because I don't know who to put in that spot. But Cate Blanchett or Ana de Armas, they make a lot of sense. I really don't know what to do with this last spot. I don't even know if both Booksmart actresses will get in. I'm not sure if it's one of those cases where either one of them can really get in or if both are in or bust. So I really don't know what to do with this category. It's not barren because there are a lot of very, worthy performances eligible, but the big players most big players are all over in the drama side.
Like, I feel like Beanie Feldstein might not even get in for Booksmart, but more just because she's Jonah Hill's sister, and we know how they love to nominate family members of other people that they've nominated.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for that reason, I do have Beanie Feldstein getting in, and also Caitlin Dever. I have Awkwafina winning, like everybody else. I have Constance Wu, and I have Ana de Armas. Emma Thompson could take the slot of one of these people, just because of who she is. Although, that movie did really fade pretty quickly. Kate Blanchett, I mean, I know she's a big star, but, that movie was pretty reviled overall. I think that the Globe voters are doing the best they can to not look completely ridiculous. So I don't know if her star power is going to be enough to get her in here. Honestly, though, once you get past those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I guess 7, if you're being generous, with Kate Blanchett, there really is nobody else that I could see getting in. Maybe Charlize Theron for Long Shot. I don't know.
Angelina Jolie.
Yeah. Francesca Hayward for Cats. But anyway, I think we can move on from this category as well. Let's go to the drama. Start off with drama actor Riley Chow, please.
All right. Let's see here. I thought we'd be going over to the comedy category. All right, so I've got Joaquin Phoenix winning, then I've got Adam Driver, Robert De Niro, Jonathan Pryce, and Antonio Banderas. So they are the top 5 in the prediction center, which means that I don't have Christian Bale, who is number 6, and not considering anyone else.
Tony Ruiz.
I have everybody in that Riley just mentioned, except for I do have Christian Bale instead of Jonathan Pryce. Bale is somebody that the Globes love. He won last year for Vice, which was kind of surprising. So I'm going to keep Bale in my 5th slot.
And Luca.
Yep, I have, the same 5. I have Joaquin Phoenix winning. I feel very confident about that. Then I have Adam Driver in 2nd, Robert De Niro in 3rd, Jonathan Pryce, and then I have Antonio Banderas.
And I have those same 5 as well. I also have Jonathan Pryce winning. I will say, Tony, you bring up a really... I'm sorry, did I say John? I meant Joaquin Phoenix. Excuse me.
Like, wow, that's bold.
They both have the same initials. I have Joaquin Phoenix winning. After that, I think that it could either be Robert De Niro or Antonio Banderas, because Banderas, this is his first major Oscar play. De Niro, this is the best he's been in a long time. After that, I think, you can round it out with Jonathan Pryce and Robert De Niro. Or Tony does make a good point about Christian Bale in Ford v. Ferrari. It's just a question, I think, of how much they like that film overall. If it's a Best Picture nominee, which we'll get to in a little bit, I could see him getting in as well. If not, I don't know if he'll have enough support overall, but we shall see. Anything else we'd like to say about this? I mean, is there anybody else we can consider? Or have we covered it?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Hey, Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse. You never know. They like their big stars. And maybe, I don't know, we haven't talked at all about Richard Jewell, but I don't think that's going to be seen.
I'm not going to start now.
We'll see. I mean, who knows? I don't know if they've all seen it yet or not, but we shall see. With that, let's go over to Best Film Drama Actress, Riley Chow.
Yeah, so in this category, it's a bit more exciting because I am only matching 3 out of 5 with you, Zach, last time I checked. But I am going with the consensus top 5. So that's Renee Zellweger, that's Scarlett Johansson, that's Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, because that's a late release. And hey, they loved Lady Bird a couple years ago, giving it a couple awards, same director, same lead actress. Then I've got Charlize Theron for Bombshell. People are very passionate about that performance. And then I have Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, largely because I hear that she's working the campaign trail. So the Golden Globe voters love it when people do that.
Tony, what are you thinking?
I have the exact same 5. I have the exact same 5. Yeah, Cynthia Erivo is certainly playing the game. But I do think that I have Renee Zellweger winning this.
Mm-hmm. Luca, anything different?
Yes, I do have something different. I mean, I do have Renee Zellweger, Scarlett Johansson, Charlize Theron, and Saoirse Ronan. And then my number 5 pick is Elizabeth Moss for her smell. But it makes the nomination, the prediction makes no sense. But it's just, I'm going out on a limb for that one because it could be another Rosamund Pike for A Private War last year, where, you know, it's this big, showy performance in a movie that is acclaimed but not, you know, all that popular or was not seen by so many people. And they love Elizabeth Moss. And she just received a Gotham Award nomination and an Independent Spirit nomination. And it's just, she's a wild card, and I'm just going to put her in that 5th slot at the moment. That doesn't mean I'm going to keep her there until nominations morning, because as you already said, Cynthia Erivo seems like a really safe bet. And then there's also Lupita Nyong'o for Us. And they actually owe her a win, actually, because they didn't award her for 12 Years a Slave. And this category is pretty stacked because we also have Alfre Woodard for Clemency. If they saw the movie and got the screeners on time, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see her show up here. So my Elizabeth Moss prediction probably makes no sense, but sometimes you got to be gutsy. And the Globes, you know, throw curveballs at us every single year.
All right, with that, I will break from the consensus a little bit. I've got Renee Zellweger for Judy. I've got Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, Charlize Theron for Bombshell. And in my 4th and 5th slots, I do have Alfre Woodard for Clemency and Lupita Nyong'o for Us. Although I should probably put Saoirse Ronan in there and possibly Cynthia Erivo, just for the reasons that, you know, you guys have outlined. I think, you know, another possibility that could really surprise us is maybe Julianne Moore for Gloria Bell, or perhaps even Isabelle Huppert and Frankie, you know, just because they've proven that they love Isabelle Huppert. I don't know if they will have seen that movie or not. This is a much more competitive race, I think. You know, I mean, if you look at Best Actor at the Oscars overall, it's stacked because you've got contenders from both comedy and drama going in there. This one is really stacked because, I mean, it's basically, except for Awkwafina, the whole of the Best Actress category. You know, so I think we're going to see some surprises here. Any final thoughts before we move on, you guys?
I really like Luca's argument about Lupita Nyong'o, about how the Globes owe her because they didn't award her for 12 Years a Slave. Now, we do see that pop up, I feel, with people getting kind of random nominations, not necessarily for poor work or anything, but just nominations for films that they don't get any other nominations for. I'm thinking of like Evangeline Wallace getting in for Annie after they missed her for Abuse of No Nation, or Haley Steinfeld for The Edge of 17 after they missed her for True Grit, or Jonah Hill for War Dogs after they missed him for Wolf of Wall Street. So I think that's a good argument.
And I think we should all watch out for Helen Mirren, because the Globes love Helen Mirren. She's eligible for The Good Liar. She popped up a few years ago for The Leisure Seeker, I believe it was called, when no one expected it. So I wouldn't be surprised. The reactions weren't that positive, but they weren't that bad either. And she could easily land in that 5th slot, but I don't have her predicted at the moment.
Tony, anything to add?
No, I think we've kind of covered it.
All right, well, with that, we will move on to Best Director, another one of the toughest categories to call. Riley, what do you think?
All right. Let's see here. So for Best Director, I've got Bong Joon-ho winning because, like I said earlier, Parasite is going to be a big deal. Then I've got Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, and then I've got Taika Waititi and Noah Baumbach, because these two directors I don't think will get in at the Oscars or necessarily many other places across the season. But the Globes, I feel like, really like to nominate the directors of the films that they like. You know, they nominated like Martin McDonagh and Peter Farrelly and Tom McCarthy in recent years, even though those were kind of less flashy films visually, but they really liked all of those movies.
Yeah. Tony, what do you think?
Right now I have Scorsese winning, but I also have Bong Joon-ho and Quentin Tarantino, and I have Noah Baumbach, and then I have Pedro Almodovar for Pain and Glory. Almodovar is just he screams Hollywood Foreign Press. That said, I think he's probably the most vulnerable of my predictions.
Mm-hmm. Luca, what do you think?
I have Sam Mendes in my number one. Yeah, I Spot after the reactions for 1917 dropped yesterday, and it's a big war epic, and it's, you know, a director's achievement. Then I have Bong Joon-ho in second place. I have Martin Scorsese in third, Quentin Tarantino in fourth, and then I have Noah Baumbach in fifth. And one other person I want to mention is Greta Gerwig. I don't think she's getting nominated, but last time they snubbed her in Best Director, it was a big, huge thing. So if they really want to make it up to her and don't want to, and want to nominate a female director, then there's a good chance she could make it in. And of course, I don't want to discredit her work. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it's great. But I don't have her in at the moment. The competition is really, really stacked. And I wish a female director could get nominated, but I can't. All the five that will be nominated will all be worthy. I'm pretty sure about that.
Well, with that, I would say I have Martin Scorsese, who could win. They've liked him a lot more than the Academy has in terms of giving him awards. I mean, in addition to winning for The Departed, he also won for Hugo and Gangs of New York. So that's a possibility. I have Bong Joon-ho for Parasite. I have Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I have Sam Mendes for 1917 because a lot of times this is going to be the last thing that Globe voters see, and sometimes that will benefit a film in the director category, like Ridley Scott a few years ago for All the Money in the World. And this being like a big technical achievement, I think that will benefit it as well. In my fifth slot, I have Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit, even though I don't think that he's going to be an Oscar nominee. Tony, I'm predicting Pedro Almodovar to get in at the Oscars in his place. He definitely could be nominated here as well. But knowing that Bong Joon-ho will be nominated without a Best Picture nomination, I don't know if they're going to do two of those in the same year.
I literally, as you guys were talking, because I did hear about the reaction to 1917, and I literally just took Almodovar out, and I just put Sam Mendes in.
And I should say again, I mean, I really do think I have him in my five. I've had Pedro Almodovar in my five at the Oscars. I think even if he misses at all the other places, I think he'll probably get nominated, just like Paweł Pawlikowski last year for Cold War, and just like Almodovar did for Talk to Her. I think that because of the director's branch of the Academy becoming more international and more diverse, that really benefits a person like him much more so than some of these other filmmakers. Noah Baumbach could definitely get in. Greta Gerwig could definitely get in. I think it's kind of a delicious narrative for them to have husband and wife competing against each other in the Best Director category. Todd Phillips, I think, could get in for Joker as well. I think he's a little bit stronger at the Oscars than the Globes necessarily. Luca, you mentioned female directors. There is a chance of like a Marielle Heller for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, or Lulu Wang for The Farewell to get in. I just think that it's perhaps it's so stacked with like these kind of huge directorial achievements that it might be a little harder for the more subtler work of like A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood or The Farewell to get in. With that, do we have any final thought? Yeah.
Does that with all these directorial achievements, does that make it more difficult for somebody, say, like Noah Baumbach to get in?
Well, that's why I don't have him getting in right now.
Oh, yeah. Well.
So that's why. I mean, I think that, Riley makes a good point about them nominating people like a Peter Farrelly if they really like the movie. But we'll see. I mean, we're about to talk about a category where I think Noah Baumbach will absolutely get in. Maybe one of the hardest categories to call at the Golden Globes. the best screenplay race. As you know, they don't have original and adapted. They just have one for screenwriting. And sometimes that makes it a little hard for us to call because we're pulling from both of those lineups. With that, Riley, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I do have Noah Baumbach winning. I find in this category they really like to nominate screenplays for films that are more screenplay-driven as opposed to director-driven. So I think Marriage Story is right up their alley in that regard. In second place, I've got Parasite. That one is also a very original story. And they even nominated Roma last year, which was a sparser screenplay, a different foreign film that they really enjoyed. Then I've got Jojo Rabbit. I have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is the front runner. They certainly like to nominate Quentin Tarantino. And in fifth, I've got The Two Popes. Again, I think that's more of a playful, crowd-pleasing, more of a screenplay-driven film than The Irishman, which is the odds-on contender that I'm not predicting.
Tony, what have you got?
As usual, Riley has a blind spot about The Irishman that he will rue eventually. I have Parasite in first, and I have The Irishman in second, and then I have Jojo Rabbit, Marriage Story, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think I feel like Parasite is one of those films, and I am biased because it is my favorite film. But it's the type of film that you can't separate the directing from the screenplay. They're both equally powerful and noticeable in this. So yeah, that's where I'm going right now.
Luca, what have you got?
So I have Marriage Story in first place. I had Jojo Rabbit about an hour ago, but I just switched it out for Marriage Story. Then I have Jojo Rabbit. Then I have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, and The Two Popes. But I think I'm going to take The Two Popes out now and put in Parasite. I have no idea why I don't have Parasite in. It's been cited as one of the most original movies, not only of this year, but of the last years. And if it's so acclaimed that Bong Joon-ho could win director and, probably will win foreign language film, then I don't see why it doesn't get nominated here, especially since the screenplay is one of the most acclaimed aspects of that movie. But The Two Popes could absolutely happen. It's a, typical Globe type of movie. And I think the movie will do well overall with HFPA voters.
All right. So I have Marriage Story as well. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think the reason why Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the odds-on favorite is that I think Tarantino has won 2 Golden Globes for screenwriting, same number that he's won at the Academy. And I think he even got nominated for The Hateful Eight, which didn't translate at the Oscars. But they certainly love him in this category, and that could still happen. I have The Irishman, I have Parasite, and I have Jojo Rabbit. The reason I don't have The Two Popes in right now is because, even though Anthony McCartan writes the kind of films that the Golden Globes love, he has never personally been nominated before. So it makes me wonder if maybe they have a blind spot for him. That could totally be wrong. He could absolutely get in this year, but I don't know over who. Little Women, this is a place that could show up. Again, maybe they would want to have husband and wife competing against each other. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, The Farewell, Bombshell, Joker, Knives Out, Booksmart, Us, Pain and Glory. These are all films that could factor in here. Why are we so kind of fixed on this top 6? Is it just that it's so competitive?
I think a lot of it has to do with we're going with when you have a category that combines adapted and original, which is kind of like the opposite of what the Oscars does. The Golden Globes, we have comedy and musical, but then we put all the screenplays together. So I just think there's fewer slots. I think that's just as simple as it is.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we move on to the big 2?
Martin Scorsese's movies have not been nominated in this category since The Departed. And he's actually won Best Director since then. He's had performances that have won for the movie. So I'm not sure, screenplay is really where the Globes look to recognize his films.
Well, we will certainly see if your bias against the Irishman will translate to a bias from the Hollywood Foreign Press, Riley Chow. With
And never
that,
mind that the screenplay that we're talking about is written by Steven Zalian.
exactly.
So, there we go.
Exactly. Who won the Golden Globe, right, for Moneyball? Am I right about that? With Aaron Sorkin and Stan Shervin?
He did not. No, it was Midnight in Paris.
You're right. Okay.
And they were not too fond of The Night of, thinking of recent Stephen Zalian things.
Well, I mean, you just have it out for everybody with The Irishman, don't you, Riley? With that, let's move on to the top 2 film categories. Let's start with comedy. Riley, what have you got?
Okay, so I've got 5 of the top 6. Spoiler alert. I've got Jojo Rabbit, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Rocketman, Hustlers, which is in 6th place, and then I've got Knives Out. So I'm missing Dolomite Is My Name, which I think is just too small a film. I don't think it's really going to take off. Another one that I'm considering is Cats, because they love musicals in the musical category.
Well, we should say, I mean, Cats, I don't know if Cats has been seen by anybody yet. They could nominate it without watching it, certainly, but from what I've heard, they're not going to make the deadline to be screened to the Hollywood Foreign Press. So
I thought that was reversed, actually, but I'll look it up. Yeah.
Okay, yes, please do. Yeah, I have not seen any reversal of that. But while you're doing that, Tony, what have you got?
I've got Jojo Rabbit, Rocketman, Knives Out, Dolomite, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't buy this thing that Dolomite is too small of a movie, because it is not a small movie by any stretch of the imagination. But I've got Jojo Rabbit winning.
Yeah.
Luca, what have you got?
Yeah. So I also have Jojo Rabbit winning, and then I have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Hustlers, Knives Out, and Dolomite Is My Name. I don't have Rocketman, even though I think it's totally a possibility. But I just feel like these other movies have more passion behind them. I think if they win, Taron Egerton probably will be the place to do so. You know, that's ironic given the fact that Bohemian Rhapsody just won last year. But not sure Rocketman was not as big a success as Bohemian Rhapsody was. But I do think it's those 6 movies that are competing for the 5 slots. And you know what? If we're predicting the 2 Booksmart actresses to get in, it would be weird not to consider it in this category. But again, I'm not sure about both of them getting in, and I don't know if it can compete with these other bigger movies.
Yeah, so our sister publication, Variety, did report a few days ago that it had been reversed, and Cats will be screening in the first few days of December. So it could very well be the last film that they see before they vote.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah.
And the one I would take out is Knives Out, just because I feel like it might be a little too idiosyncratic.
Well, I agree. I think it is too idiosyncratic. That's why I don't have it in my predicted 5 right now. I'm going with, unless, Cats explodes with them. I've got Jojo Rabbit winning. I've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which feels like the alternative for that. I've got Dolomite Is My Name. I've got Rocketman, and I've got Hustlers. Knives Out and Cats could totally get in. So could Booksmart. So could Uncut Gems, for that matter. I mentioned how much I love The Laundromat. That's a possibility. Yesterday's a possibility. The Lion King is a possibility. I think that once you get past that top 7, it might, I don't know, the chances might drop off a little bit. Dolomite, everybody who's seen Dolomite loves it, from what I can tell. And if I've got Eddie Murphy predicted to win, it makes sense to have that movie predicted to get in. Same thing with, I think, Rocketman. They love musicals. One of them will get in. Hustlers is a film that surprised everybody with its box office. I think that will help carry it into they like to nominate popular movies, and it's certainly a popular movie. Is there any final thoughts on this category? I mean, I will say that, I think this is a race between Jojo Rabbit and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood
Absolutely.
to win. Yeah. Any final thoughts, you guys?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
All right. Well, then, let us move on to the final category, Best Drama Film. Riley Chow, what are you predicting?
Well, I do have the front runner, The Irishman, but of course I have it in second place, not first. And
Of
first
course
I have
you do.
Marriage Story. Then I've got 1917, which is kind of strange because I don't have its director in. So I'm thinking it'll just get film, drama, and score. So we'll see how that prediction goes. And then I've got The Two Popes and Joker. So I am missing from the Gold Derby top 5 Little Women, which I think might be a little light for awards in general.
Tony, what have you got?
I have, hold on. I have The Irishman winning. I have Marriage Story, 1917. And then I'm kind of, I think among those 5, I have Joker. But then the 5th slot, I've been going back and forth between Ford versus Ferrari and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Right now, I've got A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, but that's probably the one I'm the least confident about.
Mm-hmm. Luca.
Yeah, so I have the same top 4 like Tony, I just in a different order. I have The Irishman in number 1. Then I have 1917. Again, after those reactions yesterday, I put it in second place. Then I have Marriage Story. Then I have Joker. And then in my 5th spot, I have Bombshell. But like Tony said, I don't know, which movie to put in 5th spot. There's so many different possibilities. I think Ford v Ferrari is definitely, has a chance of getting in after that A+ cinema score and how well it did at the box office in its first weekend. I don't know about A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I feel like there's not a lot of buzz. I think people respect it a lot, but I just don't know if it'll make as big a splash in the award season as we had initially thought. And I just have Bombshell because I think Bombshell will do well overall. I think, as I said before, I think Margot Robbie will get in. I think Charlize Theron will get in. There's a possibility that Nicole Kidman gets in. So I just think it seems logical to put the movie in the top 5. But there's a good chance that the movie just doesn't perform at all and just Charlize Theron gets in. And that wouldn't surprise me because we have so many contenders in this race. And I don't even feel confident about Joker. I think it's wrong to compare it to Bohemian Rhapsody last year because Joker's a completely different movie. Yes, it's polarizing. Yes, it made a huge splash at the box office, but I don't think you can compare the two. I don't think it's going to win, but I think it will probably get nominated, especially because outside of the US, there's not as much controversy. So I think the HFPA will go for it.
All right, well, with that, I'm going to give you my 5, and I'm going to surprise you all a little bit, given what we just heard from Luca. I've got The Irishman, I've got Marriage Story, I've got 1917, I've got The Two Popes. For me, that's The Two Popes is in my 5th slot, basically because I could see it being Ford v Ferrari. They did nominate Rush after all, so they like racing movies. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I think, might be a little disappointing for people because it's not a biopic about Mr. Rogers, so much as it's about this man who they've never heard of. Little Women, I think, is too slight. Bombshell, I think, could, be too polarizing. The film that I have winning is Joker, because I know that you said I'm not going to compare it to Bohemian Rhapsody, except in this sense. This is a huge international box office hit. It's made over $1 billion worldwide. It won the Golden Lion at Venice, which lets me know that Europeans really respect and like this movie much more than I think American critics do. I think this is going to be the major surprise of the evening. And so with that, unless anyone has any final thoughts, I think that we've gone through our Golden Globe predictions.
Yeah, we've gone through them. I think the one thing that puts me, I think you make a really good argument for Joker winning. The thing that I hesitate about is that sometimes the Globes like to see themselves as the kickoff to the Oscar season. Mm-hmm. They love to be the prognosticators. They love to be the momentum creators. And I don't think that Joker has as much of a chance at the Oscars. So does the HFPA want to throw out their prognostication abilities versus crowning what could be one of the Oscar frontrunners? So I think that's why I'm predicting The Irishman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like, certainly if I had full disclosure, anybody who knows me knows how much I love The Irishman. And so maybe my not putting it at number one is me trying to prepare myself for disappointment. Irishman, could definitely win. It's just so weird to me because, last year you could not have gotten a more Golden Globes movie than A Star is Born. And I think a lot of people looked at that as like, they're going to kick off the year as being the prognosticators and anoint this movie. And then they didn't. So I don't know. I mean, I wonder how much that's going to play in. I look at this category too, and I think, The Irishman seems like a logical Best Picture winner. But I don't know. I mean, like, the scope of it certainly is huge enough to reward. But, we'll see what it does in terms of like lighting up the heartstrings, So I don't know. I would love for The Irishman to win and for Scorsese to win as well, but we'll see. I mean, there's one thing that I know about Globe voters is that money talks, and
Yeah.
This was a huge hit. Luca, any final thoughts before we sign off?
I think I'm not sure who to put in number one at the moment. I just have The Irishman there because I think it'll do well overall. But I think for me, it's too early to, call one movie the front runner because I need to see how everyone performs overall. Even though, the nominations total can be misleading because Bohemian Rhapsody only got 2 nominations last year, just for Rami Malek and in Best Drama Film. So it may not depend on that. But I think there are so many different possible winners at the moment. You made very good arguments for Joker, and if I start sensing that HFPA members love it as much as they loved Bohemian Rhapsody last year, then I could definitely see it winning. But what I meant with the how people are comparing it to Bohemian Rhapsody is Bohemian Rhapsody ends on a much different note than Joker does. Everyone left the movie theater, or the people that liked the movie left the theater, all happy and energetic, whereas Joker sort of ends on a downer or on, it's a very different movie. So that's where I take issue with some of the comparisons that have been drawn between the two movies. But this is a very exciting race. I don't think we know all that much about it yet, so I'm really excited for nominations.
Right. No, I mean, I got where you were going with talking about the comparisons. I mean, I think that, the reason why people are maybe comparing it is just because of the mixed reaction to it overall.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with Jojo Rabbit. And so it's so funny, last year we had both Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody win, which were the 2 films that were the most divisive in film Twitter world. But I mean, we could be seeing that maybe the industry is thinking something different, you know what I mean, from what's in our little bubble. So it'd be so interesting if the race came down to Joker and Jojo Rabbit. But we'll see. It's still early. Guys, thanks so much for participating. Riley Chow had to sign out early because we went so long. For everybody watching, thanks so much. Make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons below, and make sure you visit us at goldderby.com for all the latest Golden Globe and Oscar news. Make sure you make your predictions as well.